Welcome back to Sketching with Clip Studio Paint. I'm Nala. Today we'll be working with fiddling with settings on your brushes. We're gonna start off with just the watercolor brush and get your pens ready. So first of all, it's a slight introduction. Main tools, sub-tool palette, and the tool properties. Now those are the first three you're going to be dealing with. Let's get some black on here. This is a transparent layer. Oil. Okay. So what I've got here is the default settings I have set for the opaque watercolor. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Opaque water. This is the default settings. This button on the left of the tools button is the reset button. So if you've tweaked but you want to bring your brush back to how it was and you don't remember, reset button. So if you like your brush and you want to keep that brush and keep your previous brush, you can copy the brush and save it however you like. Delete. There we go. Yeah. So you do your tool adjustments. Create copy of current selected subtool. Name it however you want it to be. There we go. And you have your own custom brush started. That's the first way to start up a new brush. You can do so with, can you do that? Okay. So what I have for basic settings on the tool properties is brush size, and there you can also have the pen sensitivity, and it'll give you all sorts of registers for that. Minimum value. If you do this, you're gonna get a nice big brush. Duke. You start with the brush, ends with the brush. Boop. If you put the minimum value to 0, according to the pressure. This is just random. Is that something else? Oh, as paint amount. Random with this will give you blubby. So you want to go and play around with that. That's velocity settings, tilt, meh, but mostly with your pressure sensitivity. Also, usually your pressure sensitivity. So amount of paint is going to be how much paint goes on there. The difference here on the left segment compared to the right is that that has full alpha. This is an empty alpha. It's transparent. So if I put 0 paint, it's just going to use what's referred to in the layer itself. If there is no information, it's going to use the color that's registered. If you put paint density to 0, this is what happens. Basically, I have a red applied right now, but I've got my density to 0, so that has no effect whatsoever. is just using the existing paint. In short, this paint does not exist. You're just applying and smearing around what is already there. It's not much different from this setting. Unless you put pressure sensitivity on there. If you remove it, that's how that goes. So you put pressure, and you got that, of course. Density of paint. Let's apply pin and pressure on that too. Restarting. So today we're going to do an overview of some of the basic brush settings and how to make your own brushes. We're going to work with the watercolor brush. The first thing you gotta know is this little button here and this little button here. This is your reset button. It's going to bring it back to your saved settings for that brush. You can fiddle along as much as you want, reset, and it's going to bring it back. It's very similar to how original Open Canvas tools were like, so I was perfectly fine to adjust with that. Then what the usual ones I keep are brush size, amount of paint, density of paint, color, stretch, hardness, brush density. Let's bring up brush density. No, 200 here. Full, and empty. We want to show what the brushes actually do. Hardness is very similar to the anti-aliasing. Brush density, that's how much thick it is going to be. If I put on the whole hardness, there you go. Stabilization, it slows down my brush a bit, but it gives a bit more curved control. Clear it up. Minimum value 1, so that we can get the pressure sensitivity down to 1 here. That's your minimums, and if you like the settings that you have registered, you can create a copy, duplicate, there you go, watercolor type. If you got eraser, whatever, this is the type of tool that you're going to copy it as. Use settings, and I don't have any listed up, so background color of icon. Oh, that's neat. I haven't touched that yet. Let's do this. Woo! Yay! Look at that. That is really handy. It gives you an idea of which pen you've got selected just by the color of the icon of the main tool. That's fun. Awesome. So next thing. That's pretty basic here. Density paint. The original watercolor type had something like this. And right now, this layer here doesn't have any color on it. I'm drawing straight onto transparency. If you want like a little color on there, man, you can change your original paper color. It's not a problem. But if you want some color on there, you can just fill it and then paint on it. The main difference is that when you're working with amount of paint, full density, blah blah blah, there's going to be a difference between painting on other material and painting on transparency. Now, I'm going to do a stroke here, and that's on the transparent. I'm going to do the same stroke here. There. I'm going to do that over here. There. So this is density of paint. It's about, if there's existing transparency, it's going to do that. If there isn't, I'm doing the same stroke here. So hardness, of course, that's similar as the anti-aliasing. And if you want to see about your anti-aliasing, you can see it over here. And if you want it active so that you can constantly tweak with it, you can click on the icon on the left to make it visible, so that you'll have the quick access on the tool's property. This is your all the tool details that you can manipulate. And if you like how the tool is and you want to make that permanent, you can go register all settings. And that is going to make so that the brush, when you reset it, these are the settings they're going to go back to. You pretty much save settings. That's what it is. Brush shape, blah blah blah. Pen, spray, airbrush, blah. Brush tip, circle. You can make it into oval, change the direction, or you can add a material, and you can make your own brush just as easily. Get details here, spraying effect. There. And you could have a nice textured area for your brush. That's looking pretty. Yeah. So that is spraying effect. If you don't make it spraying effect, it's going to be a solid brush. It's going to look more like this. Brush density, set to full, and you got something like that. So it's not that much different, but it makes for a great effect when you're doing the cross-hatching and when you're doing the spray effect. So, just fantastic. This is about the type of texture you want out of your brush. Spray effect stroke. Gonna have to increase how we see things now. Oh yeah, this gives you the control on the distance between the particles. Like that. And of course, this will give you the selection of how it rotates and whatever. Ah, you're supposed to rotate. Oh, that's the no, that's the gap. Right. So if you set the gap, minimum size, distance, blah blah blah. Yeah. So doing this, you're going to have relatively size distance into the size of the brush itself. Turn that off. Okay. Then you've got already a preset. There is no control on the distance for this one. Then you got closer and completely narrow. So then you got continuous spray. The effect for continuous spray is pretty much that. You hold down your click and it does that. If I had brush tip direction random, it'll do that. So now let's go over to texture. Now this doesn't have any texture applied to it, so let's put one on. Okay. And we are going to adjust rotate angle, emphasize so that we see it a little bit better. We're gonna get a new layer on here, fill it up, and we are going to apply the color on. Let's take a closer look. And that's what happens to the texture. So let's go this, and we are going to scale it up so you can tell a little bit how different it is. That's a big difference there. So it depends on how subtle you want it to be, blah blah blah. Verse density, scale ratio, rotate the paper, texture. And if you don't need the texture anymore, you click on the little trash can. That's just empty that. Border and of watercolor. That's something watercolor usually has to work with. So let's activate that. And this is about how thick you want that border to be. If you want it super thick, let's put full. Whoa! Let go! Lag. Because I have so much settings on it. Oh, crazy. Oh! Okay, let's turn that down a bit. Yeah, that's better. Now, you see how much it's going to be affected by the outside color. If I put a transparent layer over that, there we go. Let's go. Like that. Let's go with this and have a closer look. Let's get green on. So now it's about the effect of the light, shading. You can tell a little bit of difference here. And then there is the transparency effect. Process after drag is how much blur that is going to have. So if we have it full on, then it's going to just go a bit off. If we turn that low, then we see what happens. It's doing the luminosity effect afterwards, and it's going to blur it up according to however you want it. If you don't want that, just turn that off. And remember, if you want to keep that into settings you're gonna usually fiddle with, just icon on the left, boom, 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 boom. Activate them so that you can see over on your little menu on the left. Turn off. Erase, that's for eraser types. Corrections. This is stabilization page, basically. Post correction, it's how much it's going to adjust after you've done your stroke. Adjust by speed, display ratio, blah blah. Bezier curve. Brush stroke. Subtool with this check off does not snap, even though available. Okay, brush stroke means change how much thinner lines are drawn. By releasing pen pressure. Sends bigger value. Let's go to stabilization here. Usually it will slow down the computer, so I'd say reserve it for when you really need it for making your clean art. If you need, stabilization is usually on, so just keep it at low, and you will be able to have some better speed on your painting, on your sketching. So if I'm gonna go bring this back to brush tip, let's go to circle. Now here I brought it back to circle, but the material is still registered for the pen. So if I want to switch to the material, there we go. Brush tip density, hardness, right. There we go. Thickness, direction, stroke. Okay, now we see a really funky thing going on. I'm doing lots of zigzags, and what's happening with this correction here, correction, is make corners pointed. So if I do that or zigzag, it's going to make a sharp point at the end of the turn. So you get an idea of the effect that does. Stabilization, so Post correction will kind of render after you've done it. Brush stroke, able to snap. That's if you have some grids open and some other vector lines open that you're tracing off of. Vector magnet. So that's only if you're using a vector line type of drawing on the vector layer. Simplify. Let's have a look at that one now. That's a little bit on how to simplify some of the terms. You can always correct this, but I can talk about this this format later. What we're still going on is brushes and start ending correction. Oh yeah, I have vector magnet on, but that's only with vector layers. Starting and ending. Now this is going to affect how much distance it's going to be on your brush stroke. Let's get a thin brush. Let's stick to a nice size brush. Let's go with blue. And no color stretch, full density, blah. So what we have is 20 pixels in and out. It's going to percentage. Of course. Specify fade. Do I have corrections on? Turn off the stabilization. Okay. Start and ending. Fade by length. So many settings. Brush size. We'll just make it a lot more noticeable now with red. Now I'm going to let go. And you can see it made a little point there. And you can see the effect right here. The bigger I have that number, the longer that detail is going to come out. If it's going to control by speed here, anti-overflow, do not exceed line of reference layer. Now that's detail we haven't touched yet, so we're going to skip over that nonetheless. So that is how to work around with fiddling with your tools. Have yourself some fun and have a good time drawing.